Welcome back to the Gruber Morning Show. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning and welcome to our morning podcast.
And if it looks like we're sitting in a wonderful part of Austria, that's exactly where that picture was taken. It was actually on the Bavarian border and the Austrian border in a town called Sachrang, which has a field in town where there's a stone marker that separates the two countries, and that's all it is. I mean, in other countries you have fences and walls and
Sure, yeah.
customs and guard stations and all of that. These folks get along just fine, and all they need is a stone. So I'm standing, straddling the stone, pointing in both directions, and I'm in Austria and in Germany at the same time. But it's a beautiful part of the world, and the picture was not taken with a wide-angle lens. It was something done in Photoshop. You can actually take multiple pictures and then use the photo merge option to create a wide-angle shot like this without distortion. Well, at least major distortion like you would get with a fisheye lens. So this was one of the ones that was taken about 10 years ago or so.
That is just beautiful. It reminds me of the Sound of Music Hills.
Exactly, yes. Yeah, same area where it was filmed. This is not too far from Salzburg, and yeah, that's where that was filmed. So TikTok, looks like we've got a question from, a comment from Nuts Corner Van Center. He says, hello from Ireland. Well, welcome.
Welcome and hello. By the way, the people on TikTok, you're going to still be seeing a green screen behind us. If you want the full experience with the pictures, please join us on our YouTube channel at Gruber Motors.
Please, yes. So we have a bunch of things to cover today, and as always, we encourage questions, and like Nuts Corner Van Center did, let us know where you're coming in from. It's always fascinating for the audience to see how global this reach is with the internet and podcasts. Our production quality continues to improve. We've got new equipment, and we're going to continue to invest and make the experience for our audience better and better as time goes by. If there's anything that you'd like us to focus on, let us know. Volume too low, too high. Of course, the sunglass question will come up inevitably this morning. Yeah. Nothing we can do about that, but we could certainly make changes to other things if it makes sense for us and for you. So I've got a news item here. We had a Tesla owner that decided to go cross country from Delaware, Newport Beach, to California. Oh, I'm sorry, from Robototh, Delaware, to Newport Beach, California, with an intermediate stop in Utah. Just under 3,000 miles, it turns out. If we can throw up a picture of the charging stations that he ended up stopping at. The concern always is, ICE is still the king when it comes to cross-country travel, and it looks like EVs are getting closer to, being viable for a cross-country trip. This particular customer, or I should say a Tesla owner, maybe a customer someday, that'd be nice.
I'm sure they will be at some point.
He says that it was 7 hours spent charging. And most of that was spent working out or eating meals, and they never once waited for the car to complete charging. So again, if you plan the trip accordingly, make sure that it's a restaurant stop and that you put meals in there and overnight stops. It's not really that intrusive in terms of, extending time or being bored while you're traveling. And they were using Tesla superchargers the entire trip. Now, the cost that he mentions for this trip was $130 for a cross-country trip. You can't do that with an ICE engine. The average price, or a gas price along the way, they said, was $4 a gallon. And a gas car driving this route would have to get better than 90 miles per gallon in order to match what this EV was able to do. It turns out that his Tesla had in the neighborhood of 350 miles range in good weather, and I think we had to qualify that. You had a story about the weather issue.
Oh, absolutely. I've taken my Model S on trips before between Arizona and Southern California, And about 2 years ago in the summer, my wife and I, we take a usual summer trip. And when we were on our way back, stopped in Quartzsite to supercharge. We had about 85, 90 miles on the battery. We knew that the next charging station was about 100 miles away, so we wanted to get up to 150, 160 miles. It was 115 outside. And because of the ambient heat, which caused the battery to be hot, our charging rate was limited to about 15 kilowatts of DC charging, which is only incrementally more than what a level 2 charger would have been.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one time in all the times that I've driven a Tesla that I did have to actually wait a little bit for charging. We waited there about an hour and 10 minutes, put about 35 miles onto the car, and then went on in, charged next at the Buckeye station, and put on about 120 miles in 10 minutes at the Buckeye station.
Mm-hmm. Works. You know, if you're charging around the major cities, there's a lot more infrastructure. But I recall, I think it was Quartzsite. The best option there was a Carl's Jr.
Yep.
So it was some fast food, but yeah. So that's one of the downsides of an electric vehicle. And of course, with 115 out, you were probably chewing up a lot of energy just trying to keep the cabin cool.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Pete,
Yeah.
on this screenshot as well, it says 6 minutes, 7 minutes, 19 minutes, 14. Did he say how much time it took total in there?
It did. Let's see if I can find that here. 7 hours spent charging is the only guesstimate that he gives.
Okay.
Total, yeah.
Okay.
And
And I think those charging times were the number of minutes that he was actually charging.
mhm.
Because didn't he have an edit where he talked about the stops being only every 100 to 150 miles or so?
And he said most stops are 10 minutes or less.
Yeah.
All right. So we've got some questions coming in. We should probably grab some of those.
Definitely. On LinkedIn, Sheila Mucheska says hello.
Greetings.
Greetings, Sheila. And on YouTube, Joshua Harvett says hi. TikTok, Nuts Corner Van Center has a question for us. First a comment. The network in Ireland for Tesla is a disaster. And then, do you think that Tesla will fail in its operations because of hydrogen power?
No. I usually give a quick answer to that. I'm just not convinced that that is a viable technology with the rate of adoption and the improvements in technology in electric vehicles.
I think that the electric vehicle, I agree with you first. No, I don't think that that's really any risk at all. Hydrogen is a more complex technology than electricity to have to deal with. You're working with an engine that has a similar number of parts and a fuel delivery system that is actually considerably more complex than a gasoline fuel delivery system. For battery electric vehicles, the engine has 20 parts or so compared to a couple thousand in a standard vehicle or an ICE vehicle. And the fuel delivery system is also quite a bit simpler. And I think that is the biggest advantage that EV has.
And, you know, none of us are negating the fact that hydrogen technology is an extraordinarily clean, emission-free type, process. The byproduct being water, which, we have plenty, but we can certainly use more. But it's just not viable from a technological standpoint, in our opinion, based on what we've been observing and how this has been evolving. Looks like we have a YouTube comment from Bion Danish Genome Institute. Welcome. Sorry for the ignorance, but is your EV-only shop open to non-Teslas? It used to be. When we first started, there weren't enough Teslas coming in to support operations, and we repaired Priuses and Ford Fusions and Chevy Bolts and Volts, and we worked on a number of EVs. We found that in order to get really good at anything, you have to get laser focused on something, and that became the Tesla Roadster. And from the Tesla Roadster, we began to migrate to the other Teslas that were now coming off warranty. An independent repair shop like ours, or any of them, are going to be useful to only the out-of-warranty cars. If the choice is given to an owner is free repair at a OEM station service center versus pay-for-view like the independents are. We don't get reimbursed by the manufacturers, by the way. Not yet. I think that's coming,
Yes.
though, and we'll talk about that in a second. So it's probably we're not going to see, like the newer models that Tesla is coming out. Until warranty expires, we get very little of that. Occasionally, you get a customer that wants a deviation done that the Tesla service centers won't do, a modification to the trunk so it's automatic opening, or better suspension components installed. Then we'll see an in-warranty car. So generally, we do not.
I know that we're going to grow at some point where I think we'll be able to take on other models. I think it's going to be driven largely by the manufacturers, though, that come to us and and get an agreement with us to help them with some of their warranty work.
Their ability to scale, these new EV manufacturers, their service operations and service delivery, we believe will not keep pace with their production goals. Once they have a production line up and running, they're going to be very focused on cranking out more cars because that's what makes the shareholders happy. Service is definitely a need, but there are a couple of constraints. One, of course, is financial, opening up bricks and mortar service operations. But the biggest one is the learning curves necessary to get staff and people that can repair these cars. So we feel that they will reach out to companies like us, which there are very few of, and outsource service. It's not uncommon in the world of business to outsource certain things to other companies and then reimburse them for warranty work.
Pete, I have a question.
Yes.
For the future, once these companies do start reaching out to third parties for help with service, do you think there'll be shops like ours that specialize in everybody, or is it going to be like what we're doing where we focus on one company at a time?
Well, first of all, the complexity changes. When you have a steady stream of warranty work and you get excellent support from the manufacturer that made the car and you have access to parts, it changes everything for us. As an independent service provider, we don't have access to parts normally, and we have to reverse engineer. We have to find root cause. We have to open things up and repair right down to component level, which is very time-consuming and can be costly. With that new level of support that manufacturers would provide, and remember, they're highly motivated to make their subcontractors successful because they want their customers to have a good experience in and out quickly and all that. I think because of the additional support, we're not going to see the same problems that we do in the independent space where we have to basically reinvent the wheel often.
Yeah.
I also think that if you take a look at the repair centers right now for ICE vehicles, you have BMW shops, you have British-made shops, you have European shops, you have Asian shops, you have American-made shops. So the specialization exists even today. Even though there's 150,000 shops out there, it's very hard for somebody to be able to work on everything all at once. I think that's going to continue because of the proliferation of the number of EV brands that are out there.
And remember, cars are getting more complicated. It used to be in the last century, an ICE engine was basically the same across all of the various brands and platforms. They all had pistons, they all had spark plugs, they all had a carburetor, and and oftentimes those parts like a carburetor were not actually made by the OEM that made the car. It was made by Carter or some other high volume manufacturer that made the starter motors, the alternators, with these EVs, it's a different story. You have complexities that go well beyond what an ICE engine, including software, firmware, and then, of course, electronics. So, yes, specialization, I think, will continue, and it'll move in that direction.
Maxstore SVN on TikTok tells us Sunglass Posse is in the house again.
Should we throw up a picture of the latest Gruber edition?
Oh, I think
it's wearing sunglasses?
Yeah, let me
most
pull that up.
definitely.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Max will not be able to see it, but the rest of the audience can.
Yeah, okay. So this is the latest Gruber edition. Her name is Madeline. She is now 5 months old, and like all Grubers, she wears sunglasses.
5 months already. Wow.
Yeah, isn't that something? And she seems to be enjoying them too. So
Well, this is the second pair I've seen her rocking in just in the last couple of weeks.
She's still dialing her preferences, so yeah.
That's good. That's good. Absolute Alpha on TikTok asks us, how can I learn how to fix Teslas?
You know, the best answer we have for that right now is there is a college up in Whittier, California.
Rio Hondo Community College, if I remember right.
Good. I was going to ask for that again. Rio Hondo, correct. And they are being coached by Tesla, actually, who have a START program. The acronym doesn't quite match the title, but what it is it's a EV learning course curriculum. And you can get accreditation, and Tesla will hire you in a heartbeat once you complete that course. What we don't know is whether they're able to do online courses. We were going to research that, what we didn't. We will, though. It's kind of tough, I think, because that kind of curriculum probably has some lab activity, you know, hands-on, working on the car. And it's difficult to do that online or remotely. But there will be more colleges, more learning institutions that are going to begin offering EV-type curriculums. In the meantime, if you're interested, get yourself an EV, begin to dive into it. Be careful because you don't want to break certain things, but become familiar with the car. Definitely go through all of the MCU-type level things, learn all of the controls and functions, and lots of online research. We also have a YouTube channel that will help you enormously. There are almost 300 videos out there now, guys. Our videos on our YouTube channel, and we have a lot of Tesla-related how-to videos in that group of 300 or so videos. And it looks like our guys are popping up. Is this Rio Hondo?
No, so this is Tesla's actual website. It looks like there are several schools from LA, North Carolina, Washington, a few in California, 2 in Texas, Denver and Colorado, or Denver and Florida. So it looks like the START program is making its way around the U.S.
It's taking off, yeah. So there you go. There's a whole nother selection. And our audience can get that link. Is it at the top there?
Yeah, they can just go to tesla.com/careers/
Should be able to also throw that in the chat for everybody, right?
Yeah, actually, yeah, I'll go ahead and throw that in the chat.
Yeah, so Tesla START. That's excellent. That's a great way to learn it. For software, I know that even the many of the ICE cars right now with their electronics, they use Linux as their base operating system. Tesla is no different than the rest of the automotive world there. And they use Perl as the primary scripting language to talk to the car and for the car's CAN bus to talk to each other. So there are common languages and some things that people can learn.
Very cool. So YouTube, Uphill Ed, he says, hello, nice GMC Live. Good morning and greetings from Austria. Well, that picture behind us is Austria. It's the Bavarian and Austrian border. It's around Sachrang. And do you notice how I pronounced that?
I do.
That's a difficult word to pronounce for anybody that speaks English because there's a CH in there, and you have to be able to say Sachrang. So anyway, I just thought I would throw that in there.
Just got to have something stuck in your throat, sounds
Yes,
like.
yeah, like you're clearing your throat. We actually had a lesson on umlaut yesterday. These guys were looking at Elon's new Twitter handle, and he calls himself Harry BOLZ, O with an umlaut. And I was describing to the guy what the 2 little dots above the O means. I also encouraged him to think about it in a different way. That English is one of the few languages where you're never sure how to pronounce a word because you have so many silent consonants and vowels that are pronounced different ways. In German, when I came from Germany to here, I saw that they had spelling bees. We never had those in Germany because once you said the word, you pronounced every vowel and every consonant, and there's only one way to pronounce it, so you already knew how to spell it. In the U.S., that was different. You know, how do you spell knife? Well, you forget about the K if you're German because you didn't hear it, right?
Right.
So, but anyway, what they do in Germany is they do alter the vowels in a few cases, A, E, U, by putting 2 dots above it, which is umlaut, and that changes the pronunciation. Just one way, though, not 10 different ways.
You know, that's why my last name has an AE in it. Schaffner
Okay.
is a German name for a conductor, and it's supposed to be spelled with the A with the umlaut on top of it.
Very good. See, I didn't know that. Schaffner is how it would have been in German. Then,
Yes,
or
that's
in
exactly how it
Austrian,
would have
yeah.
been in German or Austria.
Very cool.
Bernard Homan, speaking of
Visitors, yeah.
visitors, hi from Toluca, Mexico.
Welcome, Bernard. Yep. And here we have a question again from YouTube. Beyond Danish Genome Institute says, would it be easier to put in pouch batteries in a Roadster than in the Model S? The restrictions that we have in the Roadster is there's a 1,000-pound battery pack that was shoehorned into the center of a Lotus Elise, and there is no wiggle room for any different cell sizes, geometries, or chemistries. It would be nice, for example, to squeeze 2170s in there. You know, the Roadster uses 18650, 18 millimeters by 50 millimeters. 18650, 65 millimeters, sorry. Yeah, there you go. So the 2170 is a slightly larger cell, but you know what? After you get 7,000 of them in a Tesla Roadster, you've bloated the pack and it won't fit anymore. So no, with a Roadster, you're pretty much locked into what Tesla originally designed, unless you come up with a completely new EV drivetrain. In the Model S, we had a project at the end of last year to put graphene battery into a Model S. And we got somewhere, we made some progress, only to find that the pouch batteries were too large to fit in the tub. And by that time, we would have had to, carve out part of the car, take the back seat out, put a large battery pack in there, and then try to integrate that. So it's not easy to do, but the future definitely is going to be universal EV batteries that will be able to be used across a number of brands. And of course, the final vision that we have for electric vehicles or any kind of transportation is batteries will eventually go away as we get fuel sources like fusion that generate their own power, and you don't need to store it.
By all means, I think using any type of battery like a pouch battery or a new design is going to have to be something that's closely engineered when the car build is occurring and not necessarily after the fact.
Very true.
On YouTube, the Nasgarth asks us, have you or would you consider making in-depth, longer videos about diagnosis and repair on Tesla cars? And hello.
Hello. It's on the drawing boards. We just have not developed the bandwidth yet to create a lot of those videos, but our goal is going to be to have a complete series of repair-type videos that will be out there for these kinds of topics. There are a few of them out there already for like the Tesla Roadster. We used one yesterday when a customer bought a 12-volt battery, and he asked, how do I install this in my Tesla Roadster? It looks like it goes underneath the front right fender, and how do I gain access? Well, we had a short video link that we were able to send him from a YouTube video. So again, for those of you curious, go to our YouTube site. There are just shy of 300 videos out there, and you may find just what you're looking for now. In the future, we'll have a complete section dedicated to tutorials.
Another question from Bion Danish Genome Institute on YouTube. And are you considering mobile repair vans? Could you foresee non-warranty repairs that could be done with a mobile lab and tools?
It's actually already being done. Tesla has what they call Rangers. And these are mobile repair mechanics or technicians. We don't know what to call them anymore. Are they mechanics or they techs? They actually do both. They do some wrenching and, some technician work. But so that already exists, and it's a good business model because if the customer is willing to pay a bit extra for that on-site repair, it's highly convenient for them. They don't have to drive to a service center. And for, the simple repairs that can be done outside or in a garage, like battery replacement, 12-volt battery replacements, not the main battery pack. Door handles, window regulators on a Tesla Model S. Those are ideal things for a Ranger-type visit.
I think the density of the electric vehicles in the marketplace right now isn't there for an independent service center like us to be able to do after-warranty repairs yet. But I think that day is rapidly coming where it could be a viable choice.
YouTube, Uphill Ed says, hello, I have seen your nice video with the Monroe team, Sandy Monroe and Monroe Live. He says, why did Tesla build a battery with foam seals, the pink potting compound that we talked about? For a service company like you, this must be terrible. Do Tesla did they do this in case of stiffness? It's a structural battery pack, so yes, it does improve the rigidity of the pack. The session that we had with the Monroe team was related to a original impression that this pack would be unserviceable. And as we had pointed out, it's the business we're in, we have to find ways to service items like this. So until we get one and we actually do a teardown, our own teardown and reverse engineering, we weren't convinced that this was unrepairable. It just meant some new challenges to get at the cells to do the types of repairs that we do. One thing Sandy pointed out, there are portions of the pack that appear to be repairable, like the logic board, for example. There's a CAN board inside there that communicates with the firmware, and that is accessible. They have contactors inside those battery packs. Now, we haven't seen one yet, but it would be foolish for them to bury a contactor, which is a replaceable item, or a fuse, for example, the pyro fuse. So those portions would be repairable. What we did learn, though, from Sandy in that long podcast we did, that they eventually figured out a way to get rid of the pink potting compound by using a dry ice blasting method. And we saw this once before cleaning the undersides of cars.
Right.
By blasting with CO2 and dry ice, it actually is a very gentle way of removing the unwanted portions like, road rash, but it preserves the paint. So that's what they ended up using eventually. They tried a chemical and found that to be carcinogenic and decided against that to liquefy the pink poly. But they found the best result by using a soda blasting or a CO2 blasting method with dry ice. So when we get to a point where we start seeing these cars coming out of warranty and customers are no longer getting a free replacement at the service centers and they don't want to spend $15,000 to $20,000 for pack, we'll start seeing those customers and then we can dive into it and see how we can repair that.
And it sounds like by that point, we have some ideas of how we can approach it. If I remember right, Sandy was talking to us as well about the possible use of heat-sensitive cameras, because, of course, resistance turns up as heat on a heat-sensitive camera, infrared camera. So there would be ways that we would be able to pinpoint where the issue is at, even without removing the potting compound.
Very true. From YouTube, Life is his name. Good morning, Mr. Gruber. I am Paul from South Africa, passionate about becoming an EV technician. Will like to get training from you. Thank you. Just 10 minutes ago or so, we talked about the START program on Tesla's website. They have some colleges now that are offering curriculums. We were only aware of one until these guys brought up that additional screen. And then, of course, trial and error and on-the-job training. So if you can find an EV repair shop in your area, go in as an intern if you have to. If you can get paid, that would be wonderful too. But I guarantee you it will be worthwhile education because this is the future of transportation.
Real quick too, Pete, Mark, is there something that this person can do right now in terms of going online and learning Linux or learning how to code, something you can do from home?
If he took time to learn more about Linux and about Perl, and that will give him some of the base software skills that he would need to be able to work on these EV cars. Even though I can't say 100% for sure, I do believe that virtually all of the EV makes that are being put out into the marketplace right now are using that same base of Linux that all the automobile manufacturers have been using for several years. So yeah, those are some things that he could be doing right now himself from home.
Just until some people can get over to one of those schools, get signed up, do all that stuff. You can do that. You go on YouTube and learn coding right now.
Yeah, and some of those soft skills and software skills like that would be extremely helpful from the mechanical side, because these electric vehicles do have their mechanical components. Like you were saying, Pete, we just go into an auto repair shop and start making sure that you learn how to work mechanically with cars. On YouTube, we have a response that says, "Okay, thank you. Can you say something about the failure rate of the newer Tesla battery?" And I will let you take it from there.
Okay. And there's a bit more. There's some German there. He says, "Ja, ich weiß, Herr Gruber ist aus Bayern. I like your style. Sorry for my bad English." Your English is fine. And what he said in German was that he knows that I am from Bavaria. So can we say something about the failure rate of new batteries? You know, there was a topic here that I was going to cover that shows the statistics about how often batteries fail. And this came from, by the way, a supporter of ours, Dana Sino. She calls herself that EV girl, and she was on LinkedIn, and she gave us some credit there for the Sandy Munro interview that we did with the pink stuff. But she brought in a company that I hadn't heard about. It was a company called Recurrent, and apparently they have done some research, and their team studied roughly 15,000 EV batteries in the Recurrent community and found several interesting things. One of them was that battery replacements are actually quite rare. Only 1.5% have registered a new battery outside, of course, the publicized recalls like Chevy Bolt. The second thing that she mentions, or they mention, is range loss is not linear. There is some drop at the beginning, and then it levels out for a long period. Now, this is, of course, disconcerting, because if you didn't know it was not linear, you would assume that it would be the same rate of decay for the life of that battery. And you can do the math and say, if it declined, 15% in the first year, I'm going to be out of battery in 5 years or 10 or whatever. The third thing that they found was most replacements occur under warranty. These are typically the result of an issue with an individual pack rather than premature aging or regular wear and tear. And these three items really do support what we have found to be the case. Now remember, we're not a good judge of comparative analysis because we're like the hospital, and everybody that shows up at our service center has a sick car. So it's easy to conclude from that all Teslas are sick, all Teslas have problems. And there are, of course, hundreds of thousands, millions now out there that are running just fine. So this provides a much-needed perspective, I think.
I think it does too. And we've also, in past podcasts together, have gone through some of the other research that's been out there, especially when we were talking about the potential early failure of some of the 2016 Roadster R80 battery packs. And we were finding some of the same numbers that Recurrent had, that she listed here, that Recurrent had found, about 1.5% or so, and that was over like an 8-year period.
Mm-hmm. Now, Dana goes on, by the way, in this LinkedIn post, and she says two things unrelated to EVs. She says, one, Pete Gruber's voice is so calming and peaceful. He's like the Bob Ross of Roadsters. I thought that was pretty funny. And then secondly, she says, I love Sandy even more. And she says, Sandy, I never went to the prom either. One of the things that Sandy disclosed to us was that in his teenage years, he never went to his prom. And, it was kind of a heartwarming story. I went to my prom. I was telling Mark that I waited till the last day to get a tuxedo, rent a tuxedo.
Sure.
No one could afford that. I was a high school kid, and I was living in a ghetto, and we were very poor. I had one pair of dress shoes. So my tux ended up being high waters. It wasn't hemmed. They didn't have time to hem those properly. It was a silver black tux, and the only dress shoes I had, my church shoes, were brown wingtips with the high waters and the black tux. So standing there looking at that picture years later, I'm going, my God, what a fashion disaster that was. But I did go to the prom.
There's one thing that I'm looking forward to seeing you do out in the Gruber Motors workshop, talking to one of our technicians, possibly Scott, about all the happy little batteries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So we've got some more questions. YouTube, John Guarino, he says, is there a way to know if a used Tesla has a lot of supercharging? I'm thinking of buying a used Tesla. Oops. There we go. I'm thinking of buying a used Tesla, and thank you from Higganum, Connecticut. There is no way that we are aware that the firmware records the amount of supercharging that a battery has undergone, but it's definitely a concern, and I can see where you're coming from. We know that the convenience of superchargers ranks way up there. It's fast, it's expedient, and if you live in an apartment and you don't have a charging method, you get, basically free charging, if you have a 2015 or older, that is. But it's less expensive than gasoline. We think that the future of EV technology is going to be aftermarket software packages that are going to give you a deep dive into the condition of the car. And oftentimes that would be important. When you go to a dealer, you have no idea what the history of that car is, and they're not going to tell you. They're not going to give you the previous owner. So it's a gamble. That's why I always recommend, if you're going to buy a used car, buy it privately. Stay away from the dealers. A couple of problems with that. No history. It could be someone else's lemon, and you're going to pay tax. With a private, at least in the state of Arizona, there is no tax, and on a $50,000 car, that could be substantial based on an 8 to 10% tax rate. So try to buy your cars from the private individual, and then take a look at a number of things. How well do they take care of their other cars, their house? Why are they selling it? That is a critical question. If they're upgrading and they're going to a newer model or something, then that would be worthwhile. So anyway, those are some suggestions from Pete.
A couple of suggestions from myself as well. When I was doing some research to make comments for the charging stations on Tesla, for supercharging stations, the gentleman made a comment in his article about how he typically never charged above 80% on his car. For him, he said, well, yeah, because to go from 80% to 100% takes as much time as it does to go from 10 to 80%. In some follow-up articles that I saw, the wear and tear on the battery is much greater if you're regularly charging to 100%, even if you're only using level 1 or level 2 home chargers, than it is if you're constantly supercharging, but only supercharging to 80%. The battery and the battery management systems are designed to help bring in that load and to manage the heat, even on the DC fast charge. And it's when you get from 80 to 100% that you start to really have the heat issues with the batteries that degrade the batteries over time, more than it is the fact that you're doing fast charging or not.
Interesting. Yep. Okay. YouTube, Bion Danish Genome Institute. Soda blasting corrodes, dry ice is okay. One can even make glue-on masks that fit certain spots, perhaps with a vacuum suction bag. Like templates that could be placed over the batteries to clear out only the cavities between the batteries. There are ice machines with both adjustable pressure and grain size. Yeah, the video that the guys pulled from Sandy Munro's operation when they were doing this CO2 blasting was a large hopper that appeared to have ice crystals in it. They were probably the size of nuggets, maybe the size of pennies or so, or even smaller. And they used a shovel to load them into a hopper, and then it would blast from there.
Life on YouTube also responds to us. He says, thank you. I appreciate your response. In your knowledge, how many years can it take for me to become a full EV technician?
My life has been one of learning constantly, and I never quite attained the level of satisfaction that I now know it all, right? As an EV tech, Tesla starts them in what they call the fast lane, and that's the jobs that take about an hour and a half or so, and you end up doing low-tech auto with a little bit of higher tech sprinkled in. Eventually, you migrate to what they call an S3, which now is involved more in software and deeper troubleshooting and possibly even escalating a problem and being able to communicate with a support team by being able to describe the symptoms to them. I would say it's going to be an ongoing process. What I recommend to anyone starting out in a career, don't worry so much about how much you're being paid. If you're going to school, to college, you got to pay them. If you get the right career and you get an education along with that job, don't worry about the pay. Because if you really apply yourself and you do well and you educate yourself in your off hours, you're going to become very valuable to that employer, and that employer is going to do everything they can to keep you, including paying you lots of money to keep you there. So I guess my advice is get your foot in the door somewhere. Don't worry about what your initial job is, and then impress people. Show them that you're interested, that you're passionate about this, and that you're willing to learn things. Bring in information from, things that you've studied at night, and things will begin to evolve for you.
I think you're exactly right on that. By the way, you would make a great recruiter for the U.S. Armed Forces. They give much the same message, but it is a true message. I happen to be somebody who took the college route. I have family members who didn't, and both routes have worked out well. The biggest thing is, are you passionate about what it is that you want to do? Somebody will pay you for your passion if you have a skill set that's scarce and in demand, and regardless of the level of experience that you have, and they will help pay to train you to get more experience and to become more skilled.
There's one other ingredient. If you become passionate about what you do, work becomes fun, and we tend to do the things that we enjoy, and you're going to be very good at it if you're passionate and you enjoy what you do, and then it's no longer drudgery. I would hate to live my entire life thinking that I have to go to work and to meet a certain end. So it becomes fun.
Absolutely.
Looks like YouTube. The advice is watch Rebuild's channel. Well, we do, and we're familiar with Rich.
Yeah. Actually, Pete. So that's this individual's channel name.
That's actually the name of their account. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it is. Okay. Interesting. He says, good morning. You mentioned earlier free supercharging for life from the year 15 and older. I thought it was 2016. You're probably right. Yeah. And, you can't get a better deal. When Tesla first came out with that program, all of us out here were saying they're not going to be able to do this long term. It's not possible. It doesn't, they're going to be upside down at some point, especially when there are millions of these cars. Do you have any idea what it costs in electricity and infrastructure and lease payments and insurance to have a supercharger located somewhere? And then, of course, the electricity. So we all knew that was coming to an end, but thankfully they have grandfathered their first early adopters, and so it's 2016 and older, and it's a heck of a deal.
It's a fantastic deal for those who still have those cars, and it helped Tesla to be able to build out what I think is probably the leading charging infrastructure in the world in terms of reliability, speed, and usefulness.
When we get Fusion, then we can power it all for free.
That's right. Tony Kozlowski from LinkedIn has a comment for us as well, where he says Samsung has the option to limit battery charge to 85% to improve battery life. That's a great point, Tony. On the Teslas, you have from 1 to 100% that you can limit your battery charge to, or I think it's actually 50 to 100% by percentage. I happen to own a Volvo XC40 Recharge. We can do the same thing. It's 10% increments. I've seen that at every EV that I have driven so far. I have seen that option to be able to limit charge.
And then we have Daniel Spacek. Daniel is one of the early employees here. Over 20 years ago, actually. He says, woohoo. So he's watching us on LinkedIn. Daniel, I want to tell you something. It occurred to me just the other day that this Gruber Motor Company thing we're doing with EVs has the same element of passion and excitement that we had when we started Extreme Internet in 1995. Those of you that weren't here, we were actually an internet service provider. It was cutting-edge technology. The internet was brand new. Internet service providers back then were typically kids that had bulletin boards in their houses that were allowing people to link in. They eventually migrated to offering internet services through dial-up. And we started Extreme Internet in 95, and the excitement that I'm feeling now is similar to this. We're in cutting-edge technology. We're making a difference, and the days here are as exciting as they were back during the Extreme Internet days.
I still remember going over to Scottsdale and helping you guys out over in that Extreme Internet office with some of your accounting stuff.
But we all knew there was an expiration date coming. Fundamentally, dial-ups is how you actually connected to the internet back then, and we weren't sure how long it was going to take for the telco providers and the COX, the cable TV providers, to figure out how to pump IP over their type of cable that was going to every home, basically. And eventually they did, and dial-up went dead, because now you had direct bandwidth to the home without having to dial up anything.
Oh, yeah. Why would I have my 33.6K modem
Yeah.
dial up?
Pete, can you just make sure to keep that mic a little bit up?
Okay. All right.
When I had Cox gave me this modem that was, so by about that thick. I could plug the cable in the back of it, and I got 10 megabits, and I was just so excited. And that was all the way back in 1999.
Yep, those were the days.
Oh, yeah. Uphill Ed on YouTube asks, do you also repair the Tesla photovoltaic Powerwall? Are these common in your city?
Let's bring up a picture of the recycled EV packs. And we can certainly repair them, yeah, because we repair battery systems out of cars. But what I wanted to show you here was a company that has begun to take old battery packs out of EVs. And remember, old, 5 years maybe or so?
Yeah,
right? This is
anywhere from 5 to 8
relatively-
years, I'm thinking, yeah.
So what they're doing here is stacking them inside a container, plumbing them up, hopefully to thermal management, which is absolutely vital. You want to make sure that you're controlling temperature and connecting them together into a stationary power system. And just because the battery pack doesn't function in a car anymore, doesn't have enough juice to make the firmware happy, it doesn't mean that those cells are expired or ready for the crusher. So what they're doing here is really augmenting the grid by supplying DC storage power with these recycled or used battery packs. And eventually they'll go to the crusher. But in the meantime, they have a service life or an extended service life.
I think this is a fantastic idea, and I was thrilled when I saw that picture and that article. We see this all the time at Gruber Motors, whether it's with the Model S or with the Roadsters that we work on. A car comes in, the battery is outside the specification of what the battery safety system will allow for charging. And our job is to figure out why. Sometimes it involves snipping out resistive cells, and sometimes it's just that the battery is low in the Roadsters below the level that the charge would accept. We have a safe way to bring that up to within spec, and it starts to charge again. These batteries are going to be the same way. Even though they might be outside the really rigorous specification for car charging, they're not going to be outside the specification to be able to take a charge.
And it may not be cost effective to isolate and repair cell problems in packs like this. But if you connect them in such a way that you can simply, through software, eliminate the packs that are, or the modules, I should say,
Right.
in the packs that are no longer living up to a certain standard or have a resistive cell, then you can continue to juggle and isolate the connection to only the modules that still are able to give life.
Exactly.
All right. YouTube, the Watch Rebuilds channel, again, thank you for the response. He says, I'm not Rich, just a good friend and fan of him. Do me a favor then. I've been trying to reach Rich for about 3 weeks now, and I don't know if I have the right cell number. Tell him that we want to talk to him. We want him on our podcast. We think that he would do a splendid job augmenting what we do, and we have so much in common that we could talk about since we both service Teslas. So please pass that on to him. We'd appreciate it.
Thank you very much for that. And then on YouTube, the Danish Genome Institute has another comment for us. It says, between Monroe and Gruber, the latter is by far the best presenter, both in form and content. Good.
Thank you for that compliment. Once I met Sandy online in our podcast, I actually was very impressed with him.
Oh, me too.
in so many ways, he is like the godfather in the EV world. There was one other gentleman that was very active in the EV world, Jack Ricard. Unfortunately, he died a couple of years ago or so, but there were certain pioneers and certain early individuals that were very memorable and noteworthy in this business. And the Monroe team is a first-class team. We were very happy to have been able to collaborate with them, and it looks like we're going to continue that type of collaboration. So thank you for the compliment.
We have one more comment. This is Life. I think that's Paul from YouTube again. Thank you for encouraging me. I'm not going to put my 2 feet into EVs right now. You're welcome, and we do encourage you to do that. You'll be one of the early mechanics in EVs, and I think you have a bright future ahead of you to do that.
You know, about 2 months ago or so, I was at Scottsdale Community College, and I was invited to be a panelist on their presentation regarding electric vehicles and the upheaval in migration and transportation. And there were a lot of students in the audience, along with professors and teachers. And the question got asked, how can we prepare for an EV career, EV service career? And I think the room was shocked at one point when I said, you know what, that education that traditionally has been encouraged, getting a mechanic degree, is no longer relevant or useful. There's 780,000 mechanics in this country that are going to have a very difficult time pivoting into this new technology and remain relevant and be able to continue to apply their skills. Fortunately, ICE vehicles are not going away overnight. But any of them wanting to transition into EVs are going to have a very difficult time because everything they learned throughout their careers becoming a master mechanic no longer applies to electric vehicles unless they're doing suspension and brakes. So I encourage them, get an electronics degree, get a software degree, computer science, anything related to the type of electronics that are in these vehicles. And for those of you that come to visit us at Gruber Motor Company, you'll see that the first thing that I take them into is the electronics lab. They're not expecting that. They're expecting a car shop, repair shop.
Right.
Oil on the floor and, lots of mechanical devices. It's really more about electronics. These are computers on wheels. There are some components that are low-tech auto, your tire suspension, body panels and things like that. But the rest of it is all about electronics. So if you want to be successful, we encourage getting into electronics and software. That's the future.
Real quick, guys, we are at 58 minutes. So I'm sure we got more stuff, but we also want to make sure we bring up the vehicle listing too.
Let's do that. All right. If you guys want to pop up that picture, we have a Tesla Roadster matchmaking site on our website. And we started this as a courtesy to our customers who oftentimes either wanted to buy a Roadster or had one for sale and didn't quite know how to get it sold. Traditionally, people would go to the auction houses, and the auction houses have no idea what an electric vehicle is other than it's got 4 wheels, tires, and, some side view mirrors. And so what we found is by allowing people to sell this on our site, tech support typically was part of the package because the sellers had questions and the buyers had questions, none of which an auction house could answer. We found this to be a highly successful new venture for us. We've sold more Roadsters on this site in 2 years than any of the auction houses have, and it's free. That's the best part. You go to an auction, and you're either going to have a no reserve where you have to buy your car back if it didn't meet the price you liked, or it's extremely expensive, especially for the buyer, like 8%, 5 to 10% sometimes. Ours is completely free. You get free tech support, and we know these cars extremely well. So one of these customers came to us, and he has a couple of cars that are over the top unusual. These are founders' cars. Let me explain. In the world of auto production, you have engineering prototypes or evaluation prototypes. These are the cars that get destroyed, crash tested and, or driven into lakes. Then you have validation prototypes. They don't fare that well either. The first batch that they release are typically to their short list of investors, family members, and these are the Founders Series cars. To be eligible for one of those, you have to be, either a venture capitalist, a board member, or in the case of Tesla, Elon has Founders number 1 Roadster. Martin Eberhard has Founders number 2. And this particular customer has Founders number 3, which is up in the picture here, which is available for sale now. We're not going to give you the name of this individual, but he had the foresight to not only land Founders VIN number 3 Roadster, but Founders Series number 3 Model S as well. So he has a matching set. They're almost the same color. They're both Founders vehicles, very early Tesla vehicles, and he's selling them as a set. So this will be, this is live right now on our website. By today or tomorrow, once final approval is cleared, we will have a video on our YouTube channel about these 2 vehicles, so you can find that. If you go to the listing site on our website under Roadster Matchmaking, there's a link to the video which won't be active for the next day or 2. So again, if you're an investor, it doesn't get any better than this. If you like Tesla and you want an early piece of history, this is a very rare sale that is happening right now.
Well, I know we've seen on the Roadsters that their values, they spiked back in the end of 2021. They've come back down some, but they seem to have settled. These are collector cars now on the Roadsters. They're not going to go lower as we go into the future, I don't think.
Yeah. It's, in the world of collecting, anything, the first editions and the limited editions and the low VIN numbers are the ones that command the most interest.
By all means, I hope that the seller in this case has a very successful sale.
And by the way, the sale on our listing site, it does not have a dollar amount. It is going to be make offer. You can make your offer by sending an email to ev@gruber.com. We will post the offer without your name. And so you can see how the valuation on these cars is progressing. And at some point in time, the seller feels comfortable enough with the amount, they're going to give you a call, and you'll be the successful owner of these 2 new, extremely rare cars. So it looks like TikTok. Stuntman says, "Hey guys, hope you're well." We are. Thank you for joining us. We've got YouTube again, Beyond Danish Genome Institute. He says, "Agree with earlier comment that Gruber is a very good presenter, both in form and content. Always a good listen." Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And it looks like we've got some overflow into next Thursday this week when we have our second weekly EV podcast. Tomorrow, Wednesday at 4 Mountain Standard Time, we have our Tesla Roadster podcast, and this is for the Roadster community, although anyone can join and get an education on Roadsters. Tomorrow is going to be a special session. We have the first Tesla technician ever, Jameson Cummings, that is joining us in this podcast. He was employee number 95, and he's going to share stories about the early days of Tesla, the days when Elon used to be out on the floor with the employees, and the challenges were never ending trying to get the Roadster out to owners and avoid bankruptcy, which was always looming during those early days. So bring your questions. Join us. It's at 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time.
We look forward to that. I know that we're about at our hour, Pete, so I think with that, we will go ahead and bid adieu to everybody out there. Thank you for the questions. It's your comments and questions to us that really help make this successful more than anything else.
Thank you. We'll see you Thursday or Wednesday.